Welcome. Today we have on an awesome guest, Emily Forgey, and I am so excited for you to get to know her and listen to her story. She is an amazing mother and wife and just person, and she has some amazing things to share to the world. And so welcome, Emily.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
You're
It's really
welcome.
exciting to be here.
It's a pleasure. So tell me your connection to nature. Where does that start?
Yeah, so my connection to nature really starts before I was even born. My parents, my mom and dad, packed up everything they owned into a box truck and drove up the Alcan Highway when it was still gravel and pitched a wall tent in Denali National Park and lived there until my mom was 4 months pregnant with me.
Oh,
When
wow.
they decided that they ought to move back towards family and packed up their tent and put it in their box truck and came back down to the lower 48 and then eventually to Kentucky where I was born. So I kind of joke that my connection to nature and my love of the mountains was really born because I was created in the mountains. And
Right.
I love that feeling. Is my one of my favorite things is to be nestled deep down into the huge mountains. And so I grew up moving back and forth between Kentucky and Alaska. And so
Oh,
my brothers and I, our playgrounds were the rocks along the way, the lakes in British Columbia, and we would grow up just going back and forth. And so we kind of joked that all of the world was our playground, but it literally was. And my
yeah.
dad also built, and so we would have dirt piles, and my mom loved to explore. So we were constantly forced to be outside in nature, looking at all the things that were out there that you could possibly find. And my mom was so great about teaching us all along the way, like what was significant about the plants that grew there or the people that had lived there. And so we ended up not ever just seeing something, but knowing its history as well, and what each thing's purpose was and what it could be used for. And so I think that it was really deeply rooted. And then, of course, I went through a stage where I wanted nothing to do with nature. I hated dirt. I just wanted I wanted to wear high heel shoes and live in the city. That's what I would always say when I was in high school. And so it's been really funny as an adult. I've gone back to nature and looked for all the ways, that I connected with it as a kid. And it's been so precious to know that that foundation was there, but I can also access it as an adult and really see its beauty and its value now. So
Wow, that's amazing. So how many siblings do you have?
I have two brothers and
Okay.
one sister. So my sister
Okay.
is 14 years younger than me. So we kind of joke that she's more like a daughter sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
But I have two brothers and then her.
So how often was it that you traveled back and forth?
It was about every 4 years. I'm trying to think. We moved up again when I was 4, and we lived there for a year and a half. And then my brother Silas, he's 2.5 years younger than me, so he and I were kiddos there. And my mom was pregnant with Noah when we moved back home to Kentucky. And then about 4 years later, we went up and spent the summer living in a cabin in Alaska, and then came back. And my parents always, I think they always wanted to live there, but there was a lot of tug families in Kentucky. And so
Mhm.
we were here for several years and then moved back up when I was in sixth grade. And that was the last time I lived there. We were there for 2 years. And then that's when mom got pregnant with Abigail. And so we moved back to Kentucky and have been in the lower 48 ever since.
So she didn't experience that living in Alaska.
No, no, she didn't. So 3 years ago, my dad was up with some friends working at their boat shop, and my sister got to go up and spend several weeks with him. And she was so excited because she didn't. My brothers and I talk about Alaska all the time. That's some of our favorite memories. And so said she grew up feeling so left out because she didn't have those memories, but she got to go and stay with dad and go out on the boat and see, all the things that we had talked about and experienced as a kid. And so she got it. She just got it older.
Yeah. So what are
Yeah.
some of those favorite memories?
Mm.
That
I always say, oh, and now I have 4 kids and they get so mad at me. If I walk outside, you walk by pine trees when the air is just the right temperature, and I'll say, stop. And I close my eyes, like, breathe in. Do you smell that? And they're like, we know it smells like Alaska. So, so annoyed with me, like, we know, mom. And Abigail would say the same thing. And then she texted me, she said, I just landed in Anchorage and I'm having to walk across the tarmac to get on the little plane. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is what Emily was talking about. It smells like Alaska. Like, I thought you were making it up all these years, and it turns out it's a real thing. The air really does smell different here. So that's I would have to say that's my favorite. But also the culture, I mean, it's just so amazing. It's been a long time since I was there. I got to go back as an adult, but my favorite childhood memories are really just scrambling across the rocks. We grew up in Homer, Alaska, which is as far south as you could drive, and it's the halibut fishing capital of the world. But the beaches are just amazing and full of beautiful rocks, small and then huge. And we would just go climb on them and wrap the seaweed around everything. Like everything was a toy. All of
Yeah,
nature, something that we could play with, and our imaginations would just go absolutely wild. So
that's awesome.
so
That's
much
so
fun.
fun.
Yeah.
So do you yearn to go back there, like to go back to Alaska?
Yeah. I always have. I always have. I was in 8th grade when we moved back down to Kentucky, and I said, as soon as I can move, as soon as I'm an adult, I'm going back. I just always loved it. It was always such a safe place. It always felt like such a safe place for us. And so I thought that's where I'm going to spend my adult life. And I went to college. I met my husband at Bible college in Missouri, and one of the first things that I found out about him was that he wanted to live in Alaska. I'm like, great, this is perfect. And so fast forward a couple years and we are married and we're trying to move to Alaska and it doesn't work out. About 10 years later, we think, okay, here's our chance. We're going to try and move to Alaska again. And it also didn't work out. And just 3 years ago was pandemic, actually. He was scheduled to fly up for an interview and the whole world shut down
Wow.
for pandemic and ended up going, but it just didn't work out again. And so that desire is still there. I still think that was home. If anybody asks, where's home to you, I usually, that's the thought, even if it isn't what comes out, that's what I always think of was Alaska. I don't know that I'll ever live there though. I don't know.
Yeah.
At this point, I just don't know. But it has always definitely stayed something that's been close to my heart. I want my kids to see it. My boys got to fly up with my husband when he went up this last time, but we didn't get to go as a family. So
Okay.
I'm hoping one day.
And your dad's still up there?
He lives in Kentucky. Right now he's full-time caregiver for my grandma. She's 94
Okay.
and she's needed around the clock care for the last almost 3 years now. But
Okay.
he's been able to go back every few years and visit some friends. And so I think he has that same heart, but it just isn't
Yeah.
the right time yet. So
Right.
yeah.
So do you think that that instilled nature in you is now carrying on to your children?
I would like to think that. But they are at the age, my oldest is 22, she's almost 23 actually next week. And then I have 17, 16, 15, and 6. And my boys, they like to go hike. If we go camping, they'll, go climb on everything. And they like to lean as far over the edge as they possibly can until I say, stop and scream. I'm afraid that they're going to fall off and get hurt. They enjoy that part of nature. But my girls haven't really embraced it yet. Although my oldest did tell me that they've been going on walks. They live in Georgia. So it's really hot in the summer and really nice, the rest of the year. And so
Uh-huh.
I think maybe even if it isn't at this moment, that it's definitely there. I was
Yeah.
I was kind of chuckling thinking about this not too long ago though. I remember complaining so much. My mom would say, "We're going on a hike. We're going to go do this." I was like, "Oh, I just wanted to watch TV." We were not allowed to watch TV all the time, so we had like 30 minutes of educational TV a day. And so I just wanted to be like everyone else. I didn't want to go out in nature. So I was thinking, here I am as an adult. I love being outside. Even if my kids don't act like they like it now, I hope that's there and it comes, back to serve them one
Mhm.
day that they fall in love with it again. So
What do you think your draw is to nature? Like, why do you love to be out so much? Besides the smell.
the
The-
smells, yeah, I love. I can get lost in big picture things. You gotta just look. I think this is like life as well as nature. There's so much there. And so you can look across at, I always think about Honduras. About 10 years ago, I got my first real camera and I took it on a mission trip to Honduras. And it's gorgeous. They call this one particular spot the $1,000,000 view. And you look out and it's just mountains. And it's beautiful in and of itself, this big panoramic picture of just mountains and all the variations of green and the shades. It's gorgeous. But then when you really are in those mountains, you just zoom in closer and closer, and then eventually you see those tiny, incredible things. The bugs, the insects that are there that aren't anywhere else, the
Mhm.
flowers, the way the bark is on the tree. And so anywhere I am in nature, that's really what I always think of. Like here we are, and there's this massive quantity of life. And it's beautiful, maybe it's too much to look at, but there's also these tiny little parts of it. And at the core, it's something so intricate and delicate, and God created that. And I think I learned about 5 years ago to just pause and look for those moments. And it was, I think, just such a sweet way of God saying, hey, Emily, that big, vast scene that you see, it's gorgeous. And also these tiny little things that you would miss just walking by. Those are beautiful too. And they all have a purpose too. So really that's my draw to nature. It's those tiny, beautiful things that you might just skim over. I have a lot of people say, I walked out and I didn't even see this. And then you're sitting down taking a picture of it. And it's, I don't know, a snail or some weird thing I see on the ground. My family is like, why are you the last one in line on the hike? You're always, 30 feet behind us. Like, oh, there was this really pretty flower I had to stop and take a picture of. Or did you see the way the water went over that rock? It was so cool. And like, no, just you. You're the only one. But I love that. And I think that it's always been a great way to reconnect with my creator. And then also with just who I am as a person. That's me.
Yeah, I love that. It's so beautiful. And just it makes me think of your daughter and just I'm gonna get emotional. This vast world and how you're saying, you just see a big picture, but then it's the little details that really matter.
It is. Yeah.
Do you want to share your story about how nature connects with your daughter?
Sure. Sorry, that same trip. We spent our last 45 minutes of our trip to Honduras in an orphanage, and I had I had 4 children at that point. Well, let me back up. It actually starts before my trip to Honduras. My dad, my dad was adopted at birth, and it was always a part of our story. We always knew that he had been adopted, and my grandparents had longed so much for a child, and he was just so loved. And I, from as far back as I could remember, always felt like that was going to be part of my story too. That I wanted to continue that. I wanted to be that mom for somebody who needed a mom. I didn't know exactly what it would look like, but it had been in my heart since I was teeny tiny. And I had 4 children. I had 3 within 2.5 years. So I had 3 in diapers. I had 3 potty training. I have currently 3 teenagers that I'm
Yeah.
either just taught how to drive or I am teaching how to drive right now. And I didn't
Power
think
to
about
you,
that.
right?
Yeah. I didn't think about that dream for a long time. I think my youngest was 7 at that point. And so my husband, my oldest daughter, and I went to Honduras on a mission trip. And the last 45 minutes of our trip, as we were just pulling back into town, we stopped at an orphanage and we went upstairs, and somebody said, let's go in the baby room. And I hadn't held a baby since my youngest. And we walked in, and I'm with all these teenagers, and so they all picked up all these babies. And I looked over, and there was still this teeny tiny little baby girl laying in a crib. Nobody had picked her up. And I reached in and I picked her up, not thinking anything at all about it. And there's a picture. Thankfully, somebody took this picture. There's me holding her, and she fit in one hand. And she had this just head absolutely full of jet black hair. And the second her head touched my chest, all those thoughts, all those dreams just came right back to me. And God I felt very clearly that he said, You have a daughter, another daughter." And I walked into the other room. I'm just carrying her. And I went and I found my husband. I said, "We have another little girl somewhere. We've got a daughter." And he was like, "We have two daughters. We have two sons." And, and I just held this baby. And the whole time we were there, I just prayed over her and said, "I don't know anything about her." There was a little label on her crib that's had a name on it. And I didn't know if it was her name, if it was, leftover, what it was, but I just
Mhm.
prayed. I prayed for that baby, that God would use her in such a way and that he would heal her, that he would provide for her. And anything that I could think of, I just covered her in prayer the whole time. And I just kissed the top of her head and I laid her back in that bed and we left. And I knew I would never know anything else about that little girl. And we came home and someone sent me that picture and I just had to print it. I printed that picture and she sat by my bed and I prayed and I prayed. And about, I think it was 8 months later, somebody sent me a newsletter from a missionary that was in the area that we had met with that last night of our trip. And I emailed and I sent the picture and I said, "Hey, I've just been praying for this little girl, for the last 8 months. And I know this is a needle in a haystack, but do you know anything about this baby?" She said, "Actually, I do. That looks just like," and she told me her name and she said, "I think one of our missionaries is taking care of her." And we reconnected. And I've kept up with the lady who has fostered her and for this whole time. She's 8 now. And it never stopped. But that reminder of you have a daughter was there. Like I knew it wasn't this little girl. And it was just such a blessing to be able to keep up with her and
Yeah.
sponsor her and help, just know that I could pray for her and all this time. But I knew there was something else. And so we go through several more years of just praying and waiting and like, what is going on, Lord? And eventually one of my really close friends adopts a little boy from South Korea. And we learned that in South Korea, you age out of adoption at 3, and
Mhm.
that there are group homes that they live in after that point. But there's such a stigma with being adopted in South Korea that it impacts the child, the mom. I mean, it's literally on your family tree forever, and you take that family tree with you to job interviews. Like it isn't
Wow.
like you think of here. It's completely different. And so once again we start thinking about what do you have for us, Lord? Like
Mhm.
is that still a thing? And at that point I had come to just say, God, if that's not something that you're going to make happen, you have to take this away. Like I cannot keep wrestling with this dream anymore because I feel like you've spoken this into my life and it's not happening.
Yeah.
And I don't know what else to do. I'm trying to be obedient to you, and I don't know. I need you to give me some answers here. And my friend who had come home one day texted me for a picture from an agency, and it said they were looking for a home. They needed adoptive parents for these two medically complex little girls, and I replied, "LOL, send it to Ryan. He's gonna say no, not right now." And instead, he replied and he said, "Get some information."
Hmm.
And so I
And Ryan
email
is your husband?
Ryan is my husband. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Ryan's my husband. And so we email this agency and just start to kind of figure out what's the process with South Korea and what do we feel like is the right fit for our family and if we were to adopt. And I knew the baby that I had held in Honduras was premature, that she had had some things going on, and that's all I knew. And
Mhm.
so I just said, I feel like these are the things that have been on my heart, that if we were to adopt, this is what we would be. We feel like we should welcome into our home. And she sent me a file, two. We had 3 little girls, 2 that had some pretty significant needs. And she said, "This little girl, we've never sent anyone her file. We haven't felt like she was adoptable. There's just so much going on with her. We didn't know what was going to happen." And I was at school on my lunch and the Wi-Fi was so slow and half of her face loaded just to below the tip of her nose. And it was a serious, stoic little face. And like, I knew instantly, I had prayed so hard, like, God, if I have, if we end up with more than one file that's sent to us, you've got to tell me what do I need to do? And
Right.
I knew instantly that was our daughter. And I showed my husband, and he was like, yeah, absolutely. So every picture we ever got of her was the stoic little girl. She never smiled. She never showed any expression. And then in October of 2018, we flew to South Korea to meet her. And we find out in real life, she's a firecracker and she's just got the best personality. And so then we went to court. We went through the whole process of adoption and brought our youngest son back to Korea with us the second trip to
Oh, cool.
actually welcome her into our home forever. And he he's so funny. He's so quiet, but he has such a funny personality. Instantly, they fist bumped each other, and he starts, pretending to eat his cell phone, and she's just cracking up laughing. And that's been their relationship absolutely ever since.
That's
Um, yeah, but we didn't know what was going on with her. And you're talking about those tiny little things, and it's been kind of that same process in her medical journey, is figuring
Mhm.
out what is causing all of these things and what's going on with her. And we're still on that road, still looking for all those answers. But she is an absolute blessing. She's so funny. She is a hoot. She's finally made it to 32 pounds, and she has probably as much personality as my teenagers. I keep looking over. She's out here riding her tractor around right now. She's just the funnest thing. She's the biggest blessing. And it's funny to think that it's not funny. God does that. He
Yeah.
allows these things to sit in our hearts until just the right time. Had we been any earlier or any later, we would have missed her. They hadn't given out her file until us. And what felt like this excruciatingly long wait for me was God letting things fall into place. And so I have to remind myself of that pretty frequently with our medical journey too, because it feels like this excruciatingly long wait. I don't understand why these things need to take so long. Like,
Right.
why in the world is this so difficult? But currently there's no medication for the disease that she has. There's no treatment, there's no cure, but we're close. We know that there's testing, and I was really frustrated not too long ago thinking about it, and I came back to that moment that we received her file. Like, God wasn't late on that. He's not late on this.
Mhm.
Even when I'm impatient, he's orchestrated these details, and he knows her, and he
Yeah.
has known her far longer than I have, and he has greater dreams for her than even I can. Um, so,
And he's a God of miracles, and yeah, it's
and
just
he is,
his
yes,
timing. His timing.
yes,
Sometimes we don't like it, but yeah, just gotta
yes. And
trust.
miracles don't look always like the ones that I think, the way I think it's going to. His
Yeah.
way that he works things out doesn't always match what I think it should. And in the end, he's God, and he's so much better at all of this than I am. And it's been a really, it's just, it's a beautiful thing to sit and to watch her little, personality show up, to watch her come to life where she didn't have words.
Mhm.
When we met, she wasn't able to talk. She is, and she talks in paragraphs right now, and says the funniest things. And I'm humbled that I get to be part of this. Like, truly, truly humbled that I get to be part of this story.
And
It's pretty
yeah,
cool.
she's blessed tremendously as well. And I'm sure that the love that she receives through your family has helped her blossom, as not just overcoming some medical issues or figuring out things, but the love she feels loved.
She definitely does. Yeah. Well, and the really cool thing is, I have to add this on there too, that in her biological parents named her Love. So
Wow.
yeah. So we always tell her that's her name. Her English name is Sarah Joy, and she brings the joy, right?
Yeah.
But she is love, and so we always, whether or not she can fully grasp it now or not, so you are loved on so many different corners of the earth. From your family in Korea and your foster family in Korea, because they were incredible too, to the United States, to all over the world. We have friends, and you are loved. And so she knows that's her name,
Wow.
and
That's
she
so
is
special.
so much love in such a tiny little body. Um,
Yeah. So she's out riding Ren, you said, so, she's enjoying the nature and
She
that
is,
connection.
yeah. She's my one who loves it. We like to come up to my dad's, which is where I am right now. He has 12 acres, and then his friend owns the like 80 that surround it. So
Oh.
it's quite a bit of land. So SJ and I come, and she has a little green tractor that my brother bought her for Christmas that she rides all over the yard. And it's funny because my dad loves to ride his tractor too.
Oh,
So they are two peas in a pod.
yeah.
And but we like to go walk, and she likes to find, she was terrified of everything originally, afraid of all the animals, of anything, anywhere. But she's so brave now. So we find turtles and play with them, and we find, acorns that have fallen in the leaves, and she really likes to go explore. And maybe a month ago we went down to Lake Cumberland, and we're exploring. We were hiking, and we can still carry her in the backpack because she's only 32 pounds.
How old
So
is she?
she's 6.
Okay.
She's 6, but she took turns riding on my oldest son's back, my husband's back, but she was afraid. We would go up these hills, and she was clinging onto them. And I finally was like, SJ, get out. If you can come and hike with mama, you're in control. You feel it. You're not just up there scared. And so she finally did. And by the end, she was scrambling over all the rocks. We were at a waterfall, and the boys were swimming, and she was not about to get in the water. But we climbed up on all the big rocks, and we were up there. And so my husband took a picture, and she's up there. She likes to flex her muscles because I have teenage boys, so they're always flexing. She goes, wrong, mama. And that's and she could, she really has, she learned, she could navigate that herself. She's strong enough to, and she had a blast. So
That's awesome. So
it's
do you
great.
have a nature bucket list?
I do, and it is so long. I don't know if there's enough time to ever get it all done. Um, my husband has 3.5 years left until he can retire. And so we have said that we're going to take a year, and we want to explore like all of the US, all of North America, really. But then
Cool.
we'd also like to go back to South Korea and spend a lot of time in Asia as well. And so our quick bucket list is to go out to the West. I'd like to go out to Utah. We want to do all of the exploring out there. And then we really want to go up to Alaska and then drive up to the Arctic Circle.
Uh-huh.
And then all the way back down to Homer. I'd love for my kids to take that trip with us. So there's nowhere that I don't want to go.
That's awesome.
People make fun of me a whole lot because I want to be everywhere. I want to see it all. I want to do everything.
It's fun. There's a lot out there to see.
It is. Yes. And, I think it connects back to me growing up, knowing there's a lot to see and there's a ton of people to meet. Like I want to see everything, but I also want to know all the stories. And so I spent the last 10 years as a teacher in elementary school, and in my last 2 years teaching social studies. And that was my favorite part. Like we'd go on virtual field trips, and I would find every resource I could to have the kids interact with people there locally and hear the stories, and just what is life really like there now? What was it like before? And I don't know. I think that there's so much to that. I'm hoping that I'm able to go really explore more and see it all. And then share that. I'd really like to share that out with the world too, though. I think that there's so much we can learn from other people.
Yeah, always. We all have stories to share, right?
Yeah. Yes, we do. Even when we think we don't,
Yeah. So I thank you so much for being on the podcast with us. You have an incredible spirit about you. You have so much in you to share. I can feel it. And I'm thankful for you sharing your connection with nature and sharing your story of your daughter and your family. It's beautiful. And I appreciate you and wish you all the blessings and that success in finding answers, and like you said, having that patience and in God's timing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. It's been really fun to come on and to listen as you've shared so many stories too. It can be such a healing thing, I think, to hear other people's connections and just be reminded there's so much out there.